Path of Exile is a game that I played over the weekend with my buddy Kyle. And please introduce yourself, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle.
Yes, perfect. And we both played up to around level 30. I played a ranger. What did you play, Kyle?
Templar.
Templar, right. We played it for quite a while. I guess we probably put in about 16 hours. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, it sounds about right. Over 2 days.
Right, yeah. So what is Path of Exile? It is basically a Diablo 2 clone, similar to Torchlight as well. I think Kyle mentioned it was like one of... What was it like, Kyle?
Yeah, it's very much like... Well, Mu Online is like Diablo. It's got a lot of the same features. The health on the left, mana on the right. The individual slots for all the differently sized items, potions, things like that. It's very similar.
Right. So it's essentially a loot hunt game, and that's pretty much all it is. Grinding Gear Games is the developer, and I don't believe they have anything else on their roster. This is their first game.
Yep, it's pretty new in the industry. I haven't really heard of them before.
Yeah, and it's free to play, which is awesome because it actually plays really, really well for a free-to-play game. It's supported by a cosmetic cash shop, which is really cool because everything I've seen so far means that you can't pay for power. The gameplay feels really, really solid. The combat especially, it feels a lot like Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. The combat mechanics are great. Shooting a bow, which is what I was basically doing all weekend, felt really good. Using skills felt great. Enemies died frequently, and plenty of blood going all over the place.
Lots of really good detail in that regard.
Yes, and
I found two-handed weapons to be extremely satisfying. They just feel like they have a lot of weight to them when you smack an enemy.
Yes, absolutely. Diablo 2 was very different than Path of Exile in the sense that every class had their own abilities and own talent trees. So in Path of Exile, you have very similar classes because they all share skills. Any class can use any skill, and they're determined by the gems you get from drops and quest rewards. The skill tree is the biggest change between Path of Exile and Diablo, and that is because every single class in the game in Path of Exile shares the same skill tree. It's actually massive, it is enormous, and every class starts in different places, and you move around similar to Final Fantasy X's Sphere Grid if you've ever played that. So the loot in Path of Exile is actually almost exactly the same as Diablo 2 with a couple of small differences. The first being that the loot that drops off bosses, especially at the end of Act 1, it's kind of lame in all honesty. A lot of the time it'll just drop a bunch of blues.
And none of it's better than what you have.
Exactly. I mean, in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, you'd kill a boss and the screen would shake and the boss would explode and you'd see yellows and artifacts and set pieces drop all over the place. And
very rewarding.
Yes, it was a pretty good feeling. Now, it reminds me a little bit of the game Mythos, and in that game you kind of ran around in these instance sections, and the loot would just randomly drop off named enemies. It wasn't end bosses, or it wasn't set events. It was just random enemies, and it was really unsatisfying.
Yeah, it's not as bad as Mu Online. The loot in that game was pretty pathetic. You really had to grind to get even the simplest things.
Right, yeah. So what is wrong with the game exactly? Well, a couple of things. First of all, obviously that loot issue needs to be addressed. It needs to be more exciting, but more importantly is that the normal enemies, the entire world going from point A to point B for all these quests, a lot of the enemies feel kind of grindy, whereas in Diablo, in all honesty, in Diablo you could just download a map pack and open that up and just teleport through entire levels to get to the end of the boss. And obviously I can see that they're trying to avoid that to make people actually want to kill the regular mobs for loot, but it makes it a lot less exciting. And I know Kyle had another point to make about the overall questing.
Yeah, well, I felt like the quests overall weren't that interesting. They could use a little more variety or just something to make you care a little bit more. I mean, I know Diablo 2's focus wasn't about quests, but I you know, not having any experience with Diablo 2 and more with other MMOs and stuff, that's just how I feel.
Right.
It's kind of missing that little extra factor.
Right. So there's no release date, but you can opt in for beta access on the official site. They were talking about releasing paid-for keys, where you'd buy something from the cosmetic shop, and not only would you get that item when the game came out, but you'd get a beta key and be able to beta test. Now, I don't know if that's happening or not, but it probably will be, I'm assuming, because they want money. I hope they want money. They haven't gotten any money so far.
Are there going to be hats in the cosmetic shop?
I'm sure there will be, absolutely. So, Path of Exile is a functional Diablo clone, and it's free to play. I hope everyone is excited for it, because I certainly am, and I'm sure they'll iron out the minor problems they have. It's a very solid clone, and I look forward to it, probably more than Diablo 3. You have any closing words, Kyle?
None for me.
Okay, that is it. I will see you guys next time.